Hello again, everybody. All right, question for you. How much money should you have in the stock market as a percentage of your investable assets? That has to be one of the most commonly asked questions in the investing world. In fact, if you had a top 5 of most common questions, that one is certainly in it, because if you get it wrong, your entire long-term financial plan may not work. I can almost guarantee many of you, as you watch this and hear what I'm trying to say, are going to be liberated from some bad advice that you've gotten over the years. In fact, you're going to say, I always thought the math didn't add up right. Thanks, Dave, because a lot of these one-glove-fits-all strategies tend to be a little too conservative. So let's go through this and let's work out the math together. And on the other side, I think you're going to be more informed, maybe about how much really you should have in the stock market. So when I was a rookie financial advisor many years ago, back when football players wore leather helmets, so it only seems that long ago, there was a one-glove-fits-all strategy. It was a very common thing. And I was told, okay, you want to help a client determine how much they should have in the stock market? It's very simple. You don't have to have a PhD in mathematics to understand this formula. You take 100, you subtract their age, and that's the percentage that you should have in the stock market. Wow, anyone can understand that. So, hypothetical example. Let's say you're 40 years old. 100 minus 40, 60%. See how that works? Double the age. Let's say you're 80 years old. Same math, 100 minus 80, you should have 20% in the stock market. Bang, wrong. This is one of those one-glove-fits-all strategies I'm talking about, and it tends to be a little too conservative. Think about that. You're 40 years old. Should you have just 60% in the stock market? Sure, maybe. Maybe not. And that's my point. You are your own unique individual. This is a very subjective thing, and it starts with risk tolerance. By the way, I've talked a lot about risk tolerance in some of these podcasts. In fact, a couple of them just very recently. Go back, you can see the titles. You will see some things talking about risk tolerance. That's another thing that if you don't fully understand, you cannot develop a proper financial plan for you. It's a very subjective thing. Look, I could look at you and look at the person next to you and say, wow, you're about the same age. You have similar jobs. You have the same income. You want to retire at about the same time, and yet your risk tolerance will be completely different than this person's. Why? It's just your makeup. It's your life experiences. There's not a right or wrong answer. I will tell you, for you younger investors out there, don't beat yourself up too much on this. If you say, I don't really know what my risk tolerance is, this is a work in progress. This comes through experience. You need to go through various economic and market cycles, bull markets, bear markets. Then your risk tolerance starts to come into play. Then you'll understand that a little bit better. Let me give you a couple of examples. I once worked with, I'm thinking of one particular client, a widow, a woman in her mid-90s. Now, conventional wisdom would say, well, she probably doesn't have a lot in the stock market. She would be pretty conservative. Nope. She had as much in stocks as any client that I worked with. A woman in her mid-90s, almost all of her money was in the stock market. You would think, is that safe? It's what met her goals. She didn't need any of the money. In fact, she didn't even need the dividends that came out of the assets. Her so-called mailbox money, the Social Security and pension checks that were coming in, she didn't even need all of that. So as we put together a plan, she was pretty adamant to say, these assets are not for me. They are for kids. They are for grandkids. They are for great-grandkids. They are for charity. Well, bingo, as the advisor then, we are going to develop this as more of a long-term plan, despite the age of the person who controls the assets. See how this works? Risk tolerance is going to differ from each individual. I've worked with people in their 40s who are really risk intolerant. They don't like to lose a lot of money, so they're willing to be more conservative. Someone in their 40s probably should have more than 50% of their money in stocks. But I've worked with people in that age that say, no, I don't want that. I'm willing to accept a lower return so I can sleep better at night. Let me give you another prime example, and it's from something that probably a lot of you have seen or heard about. It's very ubiquitous these days. These are target date mutual funds. If you've ever had a 401k or you're in one now, you know what I'm talking about, these target date mutual funds. Let me explain how they work. Hypothetically, again, let's say you're 45 years old and you think you need to work another 20 years to get you to the age of 65 so you can get Medicare. All right, so that's your timeline for retirement is 20 years. You go into your 401k or any other investment plan and you notice that there's these target date funds. I'm not going to give anything specific or say buy, sell, or hold. A number of fund families have their own target date funds. So we're talking conceptually here. These target date funds will have the year in mind of when you want to retire. So you say, I want to retire in 2045. You go in there, you see target date funds 30, 35, 40. They go by 5-year increments. Oh, there I am, 2045. That's where I want to invest in. It's set up for someone who has about 20 years to go to retirement. Now, one of the beauties of this, one thing that I like about target date funds is especially for people who don't know a lot about investing, they don't want to know a lot about investing, they just need something to stay on autopilot and work for you. So what's nice about these target date funds is they ratchet down the risk to the portfolio as it approaches the target date. So by the time this person I'm talking about gets to the year 2040, now he's 60 years old, 5 years from retirement. He didn't do anything, but the fund itself is all the way down to about 55 to 60% in stocks. See how that works? Now, is that appropriate for that person? It may not be. So what I like to tell people is this. The younger you are, the more that a target date fund makes sense, because chances are, if you're not in the financial profession, you don't know yet a lot about investing, and you don't have a lot of money anyway in that 401k. You're starting with hundreds of dollars, and then maybe a few thousand. It's not wise to spread it out over 10 different mutual funds in your 401k. So with one-stop shop, you can go into a target fund, and it diversifies for you. It has large cap growth, small cap value, international, might even have some bonds in there. And the younger you are, the higher the risk is to that, which is what you want. I just checked, and there are right now target date funds that go out to the year 2070. We're talking like 45 years. So again, for those of you in your 20s, and you don't know what to invest in, but you've got target date funds, that might be something you can consider. I would still talk to your 401k administrator, or if you have somebody you trust or an advisor, is that appropriate for you? But maybe it is. However, as you get older and as you get closer to retirement, I don't think target funds work as well for you, because now you start to branch out from others in your peer group in terms of your own risk tolerance, in terms of your own needs and objectives. So, my friends, it's like anything. These one-glove-fits-all strategies might make sense in some areas, but as you get older and your own unique needs start to show up, as they start to blossom, that's where you need to develop more specific allocation, more specific planning just for yourself. You can see that I'm talking a lot about retirement, a very common theme on the Simon Says podcast. Social Security, of course, is a biggie. I've recorded some things on Social Security. I would ask you to go back and look at that. It's one of the most watched videos that I have produced. In fact, I'm about to do another one on Social Security because I continue to be hit with all of this misinformation about when you should take Social Security and some of the conspiracies out there that those of you taking Social Security won't have it in a couple of years. So make sure you're staying in tune here with the Simon Says podcast, because I will continue to address those things. But until then, remember, one glove fits all strategies, buyer beware. I'll leave you with the fact that a lot of them, like I started with, don't always give you the kind of performance that you want, especially as you get near retirement. The main thing you need to remember, I leave you with this: inflation is the big killer for any retirement plan. You need to make sure whatever investment strategy you have is going to keep pace with inflation or above. And the only thing that has proven to do that over the course of time are good old-fashioned blue chip stocks. I don't care how old you are, you need to have exposure to them, and in many cases, more than what the one-glove-fits-all strategies recommend. I hope that helps, my friends. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Give it out to others if you so desire, and we'll talk to you again next week.